If you're looking for using testimonial claims in social media platforms, then you've come to the right place. On the table in front of you is an evaluation form. It's a little white slip of paper. If you'd be kind enough, please, to fill that in at the end of the session and turn it into one of us at the 2 doors before you exit. It's best if you not use those papers for notes and find something else if you can, so we can get them back. They're very helpful to the convention and also to the speakers. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Peter, and he'll take it from here.
Good morning. Thank you, Brad. Welcome to this morning's panel on using testimonial claims in social media platforms. And before I begin, I'm going to make a claim of my own. To my left here are 3 of the most preeminent experts regarding the legal ramifications of using testimonials in social media. I'll start with Tom Cohn over here. Tom is counsel to Venable, LLP. He's the former director of the Federal Trade Commission's Northeast region and is now in private practice on the dark side with us here. His clients include a wide variety of online and offline advertisers and marketers, and his practice covers federal and state consumer protection and privacy laws. Next to him is Jeff Greenbaum. Jeff is a partner in the Advertising, Marketing, and Public Relations Group at Frankfurt, Kurnit, Klein, and Selz, and is also the firm's managing partner. Jeff counsels his clients on a variety of advertising, marketing, branded entertainment issues, including advertising regulation, rights clearance, agency client contracts, production contracts, e-commerce. Jeff pretty much does it all. To Jeff's left, Tom Chernaik. Tom is the CEO of Comply, a company which provides bloggers and advertisers with simple disclosure techniques using disclosures and codes that can be used to identify material connections in blog posts, tweets, and other communications. Yours truly, I'm Peter Marinello. I direct an advertising self-regulation forum for direct response advertising called the Electronic Retailing Self-Regulation Program. My brief intro is this. Here we are living in this time where we have all these emerging channels of social media, digital media, and the like, evolving at the speed of light. So as the landscape continues to evolve, so do the ways in which we attempt to engage consumers with our brands. But there are a lot of unique and interesting challenges out there that must be adhered to, and we have some pretty interesting case examples here. And without further ado, I'm going to give you Jeff Greenbaum.
Hi, everyone. So our goal here today is to talk to you about using endorsements and testimonials in social media. And you've got a lot of us here. There's a lot of information we want to give you. So we're going to try to run through some of the issues kind of quickly. It's a small group, so I think you shouldn't hesitate to ask questions, interrupt, get the information you want out of this session. And I think it's less important that we all get through all of the prepared things we want to tell you, and more important that if you've got particular concerns on your mind, that we answer them. My role in this panel is to try to give you a little bit of the background, so when Tom, and Peter sort of go into some of the examples, we can rely on this as a foundation. So let's see what's going on here. Oh, sorry, not supposed to. Let's try this. Okay, no. There we go. Okay, so when we're talking about endorsements, when we're talking about endorsement regulation, one of the complicated things about thinking about the law in the United States is there isn't one set of law that you can apply. You can't think about federal law, state law, local law, self-regulation. There's a lot of different places you can look. But I think the real focus of our presentation here today is going to be on federal law. And federal law, when we're talking about protection of consumers, is based really on just Section 5 of the FTC Act, or it's focused primarily on Section 5, which prohibits unfair, deceptive acts or practices. What does that mean? It means simply that if you're going to make claims in advertising, they have to be true, and that you're responsible for not only the express claims you make in advertising, but the implied claims as well. In other words, you're responsible not only for the things that you say in an ad, but you're responsible for the consumer takeaway. So if consumers understand something broader than what you're communicating in the actual words you're using, you're responsible for that too. The FTC Act also prohibits unfair practices. That means that You are also responsible for marketing practices that may harm consumers in ways that are not deceptive. And we may talk about that a little bit, especially as we talk about the ways in which endorsements can be harmful to consumers. When we talk about endorsements, at least from the FTC, we're talking about the FTC Guide on Endorsements. Now, the FTC Guide on Endorsements is not a regulation. It's not a rule. It's not separately enforceable by itself. It's simply the FTC's position on what would violate the FTC Act. Remember, FTC Act prohibits unfair or deceptive acts or practices. Tell the truth, don't mislead people, don't harm people, and the guides tell you how not to do that. One of the reasons that we're talking about the guides so much right now is the guides were recently revised in the last 2 years, and as a result, some of those changes really impacted online marketing in significant ways. Maybe the changes weren't necessarily as great as the blogosphere thought that they were, but I think that the renewed focus on endorsements and the renewed focus on endorsements, particularly online, and Tom will really get to talk to you about some of those specific examples. We'll give you some ideas about why we're talking about this and why we're particularly concerned about this right now. Now, in order to talk about the endorsement guides and what law governs endorsements in the US, you have to understand what an endorsement is. And when the FTC talks about an endorsement, what they mean by that is it's an advertising message, and it's expressing an opinion that's something other, that's understood to be an opinion from someone other than the advertiser themselves. I want to talk about both of those things for a second here. First, what an advertising message is it's a commercial message. It's something that's sponsored. It's not something that's independent. The reason that that's significant is if you are online communicating information about a product that you want to communicate for your own reasons because you're trying to create content online, that in and of itself doesn't make it an endorsement. You can write a review about a product you want, you can post reviews, you can write articles about things. That doesn't make it an endorsement. What makes it an endorsement is a relationship between the advertiser and the person expressing the content, and we're going to talk more about that. And then when you talk about expressing someone else's opinions, the question here is when someone sees the statements you're making online, do they understand those statements to be your statements, or do they understand them to be actually being made by the advertiser and you're really just the conduit for them? So when you think of a celebrity giving an endorsement in a commercial, that celebrity may come across as somebody who's just literally reading a script but not expressing an opinion, the celebrity telling jokes or playing a role in a commercial. Or you may see a celebrity in a commercial or in a blog or in their a tweet talking about their experience with the product. So you can take a celebrity and they can go either way, right? They can either be somebody who's just simply playing a role in a commercial, not giving an endorsement, or somebody who's actually saying, look, hey, I'm actually endorsing this product, I've used it, you can believe me, I'm famous. And then often when you're talking about endorsements in the blogosphere, it's often complicated about whether you've created a relationship, whether it's an advertising message or not. And one of the things that the FTC has told us to do in its recent revisions to the guides is think about if you've created a relationship. If there's a relationship between the person creating the content and the person who is the marketer. The example is, again, you think about somebody writing independent content online, no relationship with the marketer, well, that's not an endorsement. On the other hand, if you're part of some sort of marketing program where you're getting some sort of benefit for writing about that specific content, there's some sort of quid pro quo there, that's a situation where you're probably creating an endorsement, and suddenly all these rules apply, and you have to start thinking about all of these issues. Now, no matter what kind of endorsement it is, endorsements have to be honest. That means that if you're representing that someone's opinion, it has to be true, it has to reflect their honest beliefs, and if they say that they're using the product, they in fact actually have to be using the product. Now, one of the tricks about endorsements, and this has come up in many different ways over the years, is that you can't use an endorsement to make claims that a marketer could not make him or herself. In other words, if someone gets extraordinary gas mileage with their car, let's say they got really lucky, they're a really good driver, and they get 100 miles to the gallon in their car. Well, that may be a true statement, but what the FTC tells us is that when you see an endorsement, you understand that to be not only a communication about that person's experience, but that is generally representative of what consumers are going to experience when they use that product. So if a marketer adopts an endorsement and says, hey, here's an endorsement about our product, you should believe this person, you also have to substantiate as the marketer that those are the results that are typical, that that's what you can expect if you're a consumer and you're going to be using those products. Now, the important thing here is that one of the things that many people had become very familiar with is this whole idea that we're going to show extraordinary performance related to endorsements. Think of the typical weight loss ad. You see somebody who was, wildly overweight, they lost huge amounts of weight. You see the TV commercial, you see the ad online that says, hey, I lost 150 pounds of this program, you should sign up. And then you would see this tiny little fine print in the bottom that says results not typical. And for a really long period of time, through a little bit of an acceptance by the FTC and a little bit of inattention by lots of people, sort of got into the habit of that was going to be okay. That as long as you could show any results you want about a consumer, even if it wasn't typical, even if you couldn't substantiate that those are the results that consumers could typically expect, as long as you put results not typical. Well, one of the things that the FTC in its recent revisions to the guides was that we've taken away that safe harbor. You can no longer show extraordinary results and just say results not typical. If you're going to show extraordinary results, you've also got to communicate to consumers that what the generally expected results would be. Because remember, if you think of that first slide, the first slide is you are responsible for the truth of your claims, not only the express ones, but the implied ones as well. So you want to make sure that what the FTC is really saying to us is that you want to make sure that when someone's done looking at an advertisement, when they've been exposed to it, when they review it in the way that they ordinarily would, that they won't be misled about the way the product works. The last thing or two that I want to say about endorsement before we get into some of the meat of some of the recent examples is that one of the things that the FTC re-emphasized in its last review of the guides is the importance of disclosing any kind of connection between the endorser and the advertiser. What that means is that if there isn't a connection, if there is a relationship between the person making an endorsement and the marketer that consumers wouldn't ordinarily expect, you need to tell consumers what that is so that they can judge the endorsement for themselves, so that they can decide how much weight to give that endorsement. Look, if you see a celebrity appearing in a TV commercial and they say, hey, I tried this weight loss program and I lost a lot of weight, you know that celebrity has been paid for that endorsement. So you don't need to disclose that celebrity has been paid. On the other hand, if you see a celebrity writing, sort of tweeting about a product that they like, you don't know whether that's an endorsement or not. You don't know whether they're a spokesperson. You don't know what their relationship is. You don't know whether they're just talking about their regular life and this just happens to be a product they like, or whether they've paid for it. So what the FTC has said to us is that in that kind of example, the celebrity would need to disclose, hey, I'm a paid endorser for this weight loss product. Now you're thinking, how do I fit in, hey, I'm a paid endorser for that weight loss product into a tweet? And luckily, we're going to talk about some ideas about how to do that. Finally, the last thing I want to say to you is liability. People often think that if I didn't do it myself, or if I let someone else do it, or if I let someone else do the communicating, or if I'm removed in some way, then I'm not responsible for violations of the FTC Act. Well, the thing that's important to remember is that if you're involved in the chain in any way, and there are different legal tests you'd apply based on who you are and what you're doing, chances are you've got FTC liability. The FTC, other state regulators, other government agencies have really not been hesitant to go after all of the people involved in deceptive practices. What they want to do is they don't want to rely on the form of, well, it was not you that actually published it or it wasn't you that actually wrote it. If you're the one facilitating it in some way, if you're involved in the process in some way, if you have control in some way, you may very well have liability. And people often think, well, it's okay. I formed a corporation. I don't have to worry about it. The worst that could happen is I get sued, I shut my company down, and I start a new one. Well, the bad news is that under the FTC Act, people have personal liability. So don't think that you can engage in any kind of fraudulent practice and just, rely on, I've got a corporate form, I'm not liable. Not the case with violations of the FTC Act. If the FTC thinks that you've defrauded consumers, they're going to go after your company and they're going to go after you personally. So with that brief introduction, we're now going to go to Tom.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Hi, I'm Tom Cohn. I'm with Venable, and formerly I was with the FTC for 17 years. So I'm going to jump right into some of the FTC enforcement in this area that the FTC has been slow to awake to this, but now that they are awake, they're going after it full throttle. So I'm going to cover just the last year and a half in terms of what the FTC has been saying and, more importantly, doing in this area. This slide deals with an investigation that led to closing, no enforcement action taken, but it was an investigation nonetheless by the FTC against Ann Taylor, the clothing store, relating to bloggers who were blogging about the summer 2010 collection, and some of them failed to disclose when they blogged about it that they were getting compensation from Ann Taylor. It was pretty limited in scope in terms of both the number of bloggers who actually participated and got this gift card, but it caught the FTC's attention. They closed the investigation based on Ann Taylor saying that they would do better next time, and they had pulled it immediately and would never again give gifts to bloggers without first telling them that they were expected to disclose this in their blog. The important thing about the FTC's closing letter here was the fact that they expected the advertiser, Ann Taylor, to take reasonable steps to monitor bloggers' compliance with that very obligation to disclose material connection that Jeff was just talking about. So that was a year and a half ago, roughly. Then the FTC moved on to a year ago, they actually took some enforcement action. This Reverb case was actually a public relations agency that had a client, video games, and basically the PR agency sent their employees out to blog positively about the video games. There was no disclosure that these were actually the PR agency's employees doing this, hired guns by the video game seller. So this did lead to an order. There was no requirement to pay money, but the FTC did place them under order. It was an administrative case, not handled in federal district court. But it just sent another warning shot that the FTC was taking this sort of marketing more seriously, blogs, and failing to disclose the connection between the blogger and the advertiser. What the head of the FTC's advertising division said was, right here, any company, including a PR firm, has to abide by the truth in advertising laws that Jeff just outlined for us. So, be honest, disclose the connection, and you'll be okay. Then, earlier this year, we had a case against, it was kind of a strange case, but the FTC went after a seller of guitar instructional DVDs. Oops, not a huge amount of sales, but still, several million, maybe a few million in sales. But basically, they hit them hard in terms of the requirement to pay money. They had to pay $250,000, and they were placed under, a consent order that basically said that they could not, misrepresent any status. They had to disclose that material connection. And interestingly, that phrase in the closing letter to Ann Taylor about taking reasonable steps to monitor, the FTC took the next step of actually building that requirement into the order against the guitar instructional DVD seller. They are required under order to set up and maintain a system to monitor and review their top affiliates. And that was the first time the FTC had actually built that sort of monitoring requirement into an order against an advertiser. Then you know about these cases already since you're in affiliate marketing, and this was the first actual enforcement action taken by the FTC in federal court against affiliate marketers directly. They brought 10 cases around the country, all in federal district court, all against affiliate marketing, not just of acai berry, but other weight loss products, other health-related products, some non-health related products such as business opportunities, work from home offers. But by and large, it was health-related products, and the poster child, if you will, for this whole sweep of 10 cases was acai berry. And they hit the affiliate marketers across the board in terms of false and unsubstantiated product claims, take acai, lose a lot of weight, and as well as deceptive format, if you will. They made up newspaper sites, TV news sites, just made them up out of whole cloth and said, the published content was this TV news report about the product with the link to one or two products. And basically, that's a typical header in the affiliate marketing content that was published in pretty much all of these 10 cases. These are now in litigation. None of them have settled yet, but the FTC was pretty serious and hard-hitting about going after this. And you can see the head of the FTC's Consumer Protection Bureau said, fake. Almost everything about these sites is fake. And they are going to continue to go after this, and they may move on to networks themselves next. But the lesson here is that affiliate marketers do have to publish both true content and substantiated claims, but also disclose the connection between themselves and the advertisers who are indirectly or directly paying them for driving that traffic to the merchant. So the FTC published some FAQs about this, and they're here. They're also on the FTC's own website at ftc.gov. But basically, it's the same principle that Jeff already talked about, clear and conspicuous. Somewhere in the content you publish, there must be a clear and conspicuous disclosure of your relationship so the reader can see it and understand it before she clicks the link to go to the product page to buy. This was a case brought about a month after the affiliate marketing cases. Basically, what the FTC pointed out here, and what's new about this case, is they actually went after an individual consumer who was making the testimonial claim. And the FTC made a point about highlighting this in their press release, that this was the first time that the FTC went after and put under order a consumer who was charged with allegedly making misrepresentations, false or unsubstantiated product claims in her testimonial about this particular winning in the cash flow business opportunity. That's about it, and I welcome your questions when we're all done, and I'll turn it back to Peter. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. So much information, so little time. It's hard to shoehorn all of this good stuff into an hour. Jeff kind of just did a really nice job there, giving us some idea of the issues and what the rules of the road are out there, and Tom gave us a nice view of the regulatory landscape. I'm going to take you in a little bit different direction. It's called advertising self-regulation here, and it's generally called the best kept secret in advertising, and I guess it's part of my job to change that. To get an idea of what advertising self-regulation is, I have to give you somewhat of a little historical backdrop. Advertising self-regulation has its origins way back in the late 1960s, and the guy who kicked this all off? It was actually Ralph Nader. Nader and his Raiders back in the late 1960s, who were complaining that advertising had fallen into this great abyss and that the government lacked adequate resources to really address a lot of the prevalent issues, the bait and switch advertising, deceptive pricing, suggestive pricing, things like that. So what the advertising industry did is in 1971, 4 of the mightiest trade associations here, the 4 A's, the AAF, the ANA, and the Council of Better Business Bureaus, kind of got themselves together here, and they said, something, if we don't take care of our own shop, that the government's going to really start imposing some very draconian rules and regulations. I don't want to get too caught up really in the history of this, because I want to get right into some case examples, because I know Tom Chernaik, he also has some very important stuff to tell you. I do want to say the board recently expanded to include 3 different trade associations now, the IAB, the DMA, and the ERA. They joined the National Advertising Review Council board in, I think it was 2006, and they really had their finger on the pulse of a lot of the digital issues, so they brought some very good perspective now to this group. And the NARC is the National Advertising Review Council. And they're the group that provides procedural and policy oversight to all of the self-regulatory organizations. NAD, KRU, ERSP is the one I administer. And that's the one for direct response advertising. The NARB is the appellate piece for the National Advertising Division. I'm going to give you a real quick example of one of the NAD's cases in a little while. Again, my group is ERSP. And what our purview is direct response advertising, which we define as advertising in which consumers are asked to place an order or obtain additional information regarding a product or service directly with the advertiser through some means of electronic device, a computer, a telephone. Usually if you see a 1-800 number, that comes under the ERSP purview. The most popular one, of course, is the infomercial, but it also includes home shopping networks, online advertising, things like that. We look at all the garden variety of issues. The 3 on this list that we'll really want to pay careful attention to: testimonial piece, the new media piece, and the disclosure piece. Jeff and Tom both got into Section 255 of the revised FTC guides, which talk about the importance of disclosing material connections, particularly when consumers might not be aware that there is something there between the person doing the talking and the brand. Actually, this first case that I'm going to show you doesn't really get into the material connection piece. It gets into a different piece that the revised FTC guides talked about, and that's typicality of performance. Okay, so now here we have a Twitter page. Pretty interesting case here. Okay, you have Jessica Stewart, who is making this claim regarding what appeared to be typical product performance of this homeopathic weight loss product called Liquid HCG, okay? And so here we have, again, this testimonial claim. Tina Thompson, according to Jessica Stewart, lost a little over 7 pounds in 5 days using this product. Very nice, 7 pounds in 5 days, pretty good, okay? Then, if you click that hashtag on, you get driven to the product homepage there. It's the Liquid HCG homepage where they feature this testimonial. Now, at IRSP, we pick this up as part of our monitoring duties, okay? So we take a look at this and we say, you know, not only this claim, not only this testimonial, but there are a lot of others out there making some very aggressive performance claims. One claim was, you know, lose, 30 pounds in 7 days, which run afoul of the Federal Trade Commission's red flag bogus weight loss claim. So we kind of knew something was going on there. And then we said, hey, wait a second, this didn't really pass the smell test that we generally give, a lot of these testimonials. We said, and this was 2 years ago, by the way. This is when Twitter really was kind of starting to become, the proliferation of Twitter was really starting to begin. We said there were a couple of things. First of all, this Twitter claim was in fact advertising. That's number one. And here it was kind of easy because the Twitter claim was being driven back to one of the company's official web pages. So that was pretty interesting as well. And we determined that simply because here the marketer didn't know that a consumer was making this claim, it really wasn't absolved from the responsibility. I'm going to pose this question to the panel in just a little while. Now, I also had talked earlier about NAD and what they do. They had a pretty interesting case here regarding Your Baby Can Read and some of the testimonials there. Here we had a Facebook page that contains, again, some pretty specific product performance results. I think it was one woman, her name was Dawn, saying, hey, you know what, my baby learned how to read in 15 months. Again, pretty impressive. Then also, there was a Twitter situation here as well, where there was another testimonial claim being made. But the interesting thing about that was that this wasn't actually an independent Twitter page. It wasn't an independent Facebook page. This was actually the company's own Twitter page, their own Facebook page. So really the question is, do they have a responsibility to kind of monitor what's going on their official pages? This is another very interesting case. One of the issues we see a lot are these product review websites and certain claims that are being made on the product review websites, and whether or not they're kind of masquerading as an objective, like a TripAdvisor, where it's an objective review page. However, sometimes there are some other things going on. And this one is near and dear to I know, Tom's heart. This is the We Know Diets case.
You saying Tom is fat?
No, I'm not saying Tom, but you know what? Tom actually was on the other side of this one. And again, this was a couple of years ago, really, when we were trying to carve out certain things. As you can see, it says that WeKnowDiets.com, we've compiled the most comprehensive database of information for people out there looking for a trimmer body, healthier lifestyle. Looks pretty innocent, right? Hey, their most popular product, Miracle Burn. Okay, not bad. They're, Editor's Choice Award. However, when we looked around a little bit, we saw another website that looked pretty similar, WikiDietsInfo. Also, we have the most comprehensive database for information about people who are looking for a trimmer body, a healthier lifestyle. We went on. Hey, guess what their most popular product was? Miracle Burn. Very interesting. There was also another site, Google Diets. Guess what? Most comprehensive weight loss database. Again, people looking for a trimmer body, healthier lifestyle. Guess what the most popular product was? Miracle Burn. So you know what we found out? That the makers of Miracle Burn actually not only own the website at issue, but several of the products being reviewed. We said that this relationship constituted a material connection that wouldn't reasonably be expected by consumers, and one that would have an effect, and this is important, effect on the weight and credibility that the consumer would give to the endorsement. Finally, we said that this disclosure of information that may exist, that there needed to be a disclosure of this information between saying that, okay, there is a connection here, between the communicator and the brand being pushed here. Okay, and I guess the moral of the story here, when you see a website that actually appears to be a neutral third-party site, when in fact that's not the case, we do need a clear and conspicuous, disclosure there. Actually, I want to go back because I want to show you what Tom did here. He included a nice little disclosure. This was the fix, and here's why a lot of times self-regulation works. Nice little fix here. Urban Nutrition sponsors not only the website Miracle Burn, Miracle Cream, but they also own several products. Very nice. Not only did they do it on the web page, but they did it on each and every page. Maybe it's not as prominent, not as conspicuous as we would have liked, but these guys did made a really good voluntary effort here, and we appreciated that. You know, during the pendency of that, there was this other case that came to us. Again, it involved the product review site. This was not the product review site. This was a separate advertisement itself that had some very aggressive comparative claims here. Professional strength whitening ingredients, guaranteed easiest application in teeth whitening, #1 discovery in teeth whitening. They couldn't substantiate any of these claims. And again, kind of like that WeKnowDiets.com case, they also had a product review site. But what they didn't tell you is that one of the products, Vibrant White, which they gave a 5-star review to, was their own product. So not only did they own the website, but they also owned the product that they were pushing on the site. They ended up pulling this thing off, and they discontinued the advertising. And that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to throw you over to Tom Chernaik. Tom?
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everybody. Obviously, we've covered a lot of ground already. We've talked about a lot of the reasons that you need to watch out. We've talked about some of the things that can happen if you don't. What I'd like to focus on is a little bit of practical knowledge on what we need to look for specifically as we're building programs, as you're running programs. I assume that most of the people in the room either participate in or run affiliate marketing programs. And some of the things that we can look for moving forward to make sure that we avoid, not only legal investigations, but also that we just make sure that we're appropriately addressing our consumers and responsibly marketing. Obviously, we focused a lot on the FTC today, and there's been a lot of activity around the FTC. But in addition to this, there are other areas that you need to be concerned about. Obviously, the FDA in the case of health products or pharma products, both FINRA and the SEC for anything that's financial in nature. And then across the pond over in the UK, we have a lot of activity around both the ASA and the OFT, who've weighed in very similar to the FTC on truthfulness in advertising and on celebrity and other sponsored endorsements. I happen to really like the quote here from Tony DiResta. I'm not going to read the quote, but I like that what he says is in order to address these issues, you really want to make sure that you're creating a culture of compliance. And I think that that's really the way that you need to think about this, in particular if you have an affiliate network or if you're developing affiliate marketing programs. You really want to think about the responsibility that everybody has down the line. The affiliate network, the brand itself, and then the individual affiliates all have certain responsibilities to make sure that disclosure is a part of what you do, and as you communicate it out. And then you need to make sure that everybody has a way to do this so that you can actually do the monitoring, reporting, and documenting that's required. And the FTC has made it clear that they're not actually looking at the individual bloggers as much as they're looking at the advertisers. Who's creating this program, whether it's an advertiser or an agency, somebody who's starting this relationship, who's setting it up from the beginning, and then going and using other people to endorse, make testimonials, and promote a product. So what does the FTC actually require? And we've touched on this in parts, but obviously all material connections have to be disclosed. And then what you need to do is be able to document that. So first you need to, as you're setting up a program, make sure that you're informing people of their requirements to disclose, that you're giving them simple ways to make disclosures, as the FTC refers to them, clear and conspicuous. We've heard that term a couple times today. You need to also create a process to make sure that you're doing this properly, and then you need to be able to document and monitor that on an ongoing basis. So whether that's monitoring the affiliates that you have in your program, documenting that you've actually shown them that they have this requirement, giving them actual tools and ways to make these disclosures is all very important as you go through. And then, most importantly, you need to be able to identify individual users who are out of compliance and be able to follow up and take down that content if it's not in compliance. And specifically when that applies to affiliate marketers, they say that you have to be able to identify those individual users, let them know that they're out of compliance, and if they don't agree to comply, or if they continue to not comply with your program, you actually have to cut off payments to those affiliates. So something that was clarified in the legacy learning example and is likely to have a very profound effect on affiliate marketing. So that said, we covered a lot of the recent examples, the Ann Taylor Loft example, the Reverb Communications example that was clearly astroturfing, the legacy learning, which again on $5 million worth of sales, there was a settlement for $250,000. A couple other things here in New York State, we had an example of a and I'll actually flip ahead to a couple of slides on these. We had an example. This was the New York State Attorney General who weighed in on this. This was, if you can believe it, probably only in New York, but a walk-in facelift clinic that was marketing their services. They were going in and actually had employees going and creating blog posts, websites, going out and promoting the service as if they were customers. And when the State Attorney General was called to action on this, they looked at it. They actually saw emails from the CEO saying, go out, put your wig and skirt on and tell them what a great experience you had. It was very clearly astroturfing, and they were going out and creating these fake blogs, fake posts, going into chat rooms and actually making positive comments without saying that they were employees. And then further to that, they were actually going in when people were legitimate customers were going in and making negative posts about the company. They were actually going in and contradicting that and going into chat rooms, speaking, saying that these people didn't know what they were talking about when they weren't disclosing that they were in fact employees. The OFT has also weighed in a lot on this. Again, the Office of Fair Trading, they had a specific action against a company called Handpicked Media that was using tweets and other messages to send sponsored messages, again, not disclosing that they were connected to it. And then you had an example, this was a recent example with 50 Cent. He was actually on the trade show floor at the CES conference. He was tweeting out that people should go out and buy stock in a company right away, that the stock had just doubled, that this was a great opportunity. What he wasn't disclosing is that he actually owned 13% of the company. In fact, he doesn't seem to have violated any current SEC guidelines because he actually had filed his formal 13D disclosure that he owned these shares. But when he was tweeting about it, he wasn't disclosing in those tweets or in any other way that he actually owned a substantial percentage of the company. Normally, the FTC does not comment on these issues until they've been settled. In this case, the FTC has actually mentioned this publicly a few times. So it clearly landed on their desk. Whether or not they'll investigate, we don't know at this point. But they clearly were not comfortable with what happened here. We had a very similar example. I didn't have a chance to put a slide in yet, but just late last week, Ashton Kutcher was called out. There were a couple of articles. The New York Times led it, and then a lot of other articles that followed, saying that Ashton he is an active angel investor in a number of companies. He had created an issue of Details magazine as the executive editor or the guest editor, and did not disclose. Although a number of the companies that were featured were companies that he invested in, there was no clear disclosure that that was the case, and there were a number of people who wrote about this. The FTC at first commented and said that things like this could be investigated at some point. They then printed a retraction and said that actually they have not, nor do they don't plan at this point, nor did they have any plans to investigate. But we may not have heard the last of this. Clearly an issue that continues to come up. So obviously we focused a lot here on the regulatory actions, the investigations that have taken place, but there's much more to it than that. You're really opening yourself up to both legal exposure and legal liability if you're not properly disclosing. And often all of these things tend to start with a court of public opinion where bloggers, individuals pick up on this, start talking about it, and then that leads to a PR nightmare that then may lead to an investigation down the line. What we tend to say is you really want to make sure that you're just set up to avoid the call. And the call doesn't necessarily come from a regulator. In fact, it's likely not to come from a regulator first. You'll often see that people will start talking about it in the blogosphere. People will start complaining about it. That will then get picked up in the press. And the best action is to make sure that you're setting up your programs properly from the beginning so that you're avoiding the whole chain of events. Obviously, what you need to consider, a lot of social media platforms have drastically changed the way that we sell products, the way that we give testimonials and endorsements and communicate them out. Obviously, any kind of sampling, any kind of paid review, contests and promotions, all of these things become much more challenging when you have limits of characters. And your influencers aren't just outside bloggers and influencers, which was what a lot of people focused on in the beginning, but those can actually be your employees, your affiliates, anybody who works for a vendor or an affiliated company. So what is the big challenge here? Obviously, within a tweet, within a Facebook status update, you have very limited characters, very limited space. You want to include a complete marketing message, a link to content, some sort of call to action. You probably want to have some action that people take as a result of this message. And you still need to include your contest and promotion rules, your required disclosures, anything else that you're required to do in an individual communication. So the challenge is that it needs to be short, simple, and again, as the FTC says, clear and conspicuous. So we, as a company, have developed a number of methods. I'm not going to talk about those today, but there are a number of ways to actually make these meaningful disclosures in short form. And then the real challenge comes not with making an individual disclosure, because you can include, as an individual blogger or an affiliate, you can include a hashtag or some minimal comment that indicates that a relationship exists. But as an affiliate network or as an advertiser, you're actually, again, responsible for all this documentation, for this ongoing monitoring, for making sure that you're actually including all of this all the way through. And as you scale programs, that becomes really challenging. What we find is that to address this, many people are still ignoring it, unfortunately. A lot of people are relying on their agencies or affiliate networks to make sure that they're disclosing. A lot of those people are then looking to the affiliates to include their own disclosure without actually monitoring or documenting any of this. And people are relying, again, on these sort of hashtags and other ad hoc solutions to do it. What we recommend is that you follow a simple preparedness checklist. Obviously, you need to have a process in place. You need to ensure that that disclosure stays intact through all your social media formats as people take and send your messages out. You need to be able to document that compliance, monitor your influencers for compliance, and again, be able to follow up and take down so that if somebody is out of compliance, you're actually cutting off those commission payments, you're understanding who that person is and what they're doing. And you need to obviously be able to scale those efforts as you grow programs. So I think we're going to open up to questions. This is my information, and happy to answer any more questions later.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you to my, my fellow panel members here. Does anyone have any questions out there? As we said, it's a small room here. Please feel free, step up to the mic. If anyone has any questions. If not, I'll fire a couple. Go ahead, right here we have one.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can go on your tippy toes there. You almost got it.
There we go. I'm an affiliate manager for an in-house affiliate program, and because of our product, which is an electronic cigarette, we have lots of compliance things with the FDA and the FTC. Someone mentioned, I don't remember who, about making sure you're able to monitor your top affiliates. How is that defined in the FTC world?
The question was for monitoring your top affiliates, how is that defined?
I mean, how are the top affiliates
How are the
defined?
top 50 defined? In the legacy learning case, it was basically defined as the top 50 revenue-generating affiliates, so by revenue dollars generated.
So that means that they have access to who your highest earning affiliates are.
Well, again, it was an FTC. It was an FTC case against the merchant. The merchant sometimes you call that the advertiser, but that's a little confusing, so I'll call it the merchant. Yes, I mean, basically the lesson of that case was that the merchant is going to be held to a new or should have known standard as to what their top affiliate marketers are doing, and Legacy did have access to that information, so on a new or should have known kind of standard, they were held liable. They knew or should have known what their who their top revenue generating affiliates were and what they were doing.
In terms of monitoring, everybody said that you should be able to monitor your affiliates. Do any of you have any recommendations for tools or methods to keep track of lots of affiliates with lots of websites kind of doing their
The question
own
is
thing?
any tools or methods for keeping track of that? I'll toss that to Tom.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk after. We've developed a system to actually manage this not only for top affiliates, but all the way through, so that you can document the system. You can show exactly where communications are taking place, identify those individual users, and document exactly what they've agreed to as part of the program, so that you can show that you're in compliance.
Okay. And just one last thing, in terms of review sites, if an affiliate of ours is reviewing our product and they also review other competition, the competitors' products on the same site, does that lessen in any way our responsibility for what they're saying in general? Like, does the FTC come along and say, oh, wow, there's a whole bunch of guys there? Or are we still as responsible for what they say?
Well, again, it gets back to the material connection. I mean, if there's a material connection between that affiliate and merchant A and merchant B and merchant C, and they're all receiving they're all giving compensation to that affiliate marketer, the FTC would want that material connection to be disclosed.
That's right. I mean, I think that the expectation would be that just because they're reviewing other products doesn't lessen the connection that they have with you. Also, their review of the other products is your connection to them is relevant with respect to their review of the other products too, since do they have affiliate relationships with them as well? Are they just reviewing them? And obviously they may have some there may be some benefit to them to reviewing them in a certain way. So I mean, the general recommendation is always going to be, look, if you're creating content about a product or you're creating content about a competitor's products, you're going to want to disclose that connection so people understand what it is, the information that they're reviewing. But I mean, I think that I think the thing to remember about all of these things is what the FTC is looking for is a reasonable approach to dealing with these issues. So the FTC is not looking for some fine print disclosure that if you find it, it'll sort of tell you some kind of thing. They really want consumers to understand what it is that they're seeing. And I think that Peter's point about the disclosure in one of those web cases is sort of asking the question, okay, it was a step in the right direction, but is it actually solving the problem? So part of it is not really, just complying with, I got to throw something up there, I got to disclose something, but have I really communicated to consumers that this content, which looks independent, is not really independent? Same thing with monitoring your affiliates. I mean, these are big open questions. The extent to which an advertiser is responsible for this network of people that it has relationships with, those are unclear. I mean, you got one case that talks about top 50. You've had other kinds of statements with the FTC, raising it in different ways. But I think the real question is what's reasonable in the circumstances. And if you're advertising, if you've got a product that is likely to lead to lots of false claims being made and lots of consumers being misled, FTC is going to say, hey, you've got to be much more aggressive, and you've got to come up with a way to make sure that what's out there is truthful. On the other hand, if you've got a product where it's very unlikely that people are going to be making misleading claims about it, you could design another program. But again, a lot of these questions, really have to be sorted through.
Right. I don't want to hog the mic. I just have one more question. Let's say on our company, this is not from the affiliate side, but on our company site, Facebook page, we have people, there's lots of back and forth and people saying all kinds of things. We were actually told by someone that testimonials by people made on the Facebook page itself is because it links back to their own Facebook pages, and they are individuals, and they may not necessarily affiliates, just individuals making claims that because it can link back to them, and therefore it's an actual testimonial, we are not responsible necessarily for taking it down.
Only if they make it on a Thursday.
You know, I love this responsibility question.
You want to talk about that case?
Well, you know, here's one great, you know, to me, I think maybe we should be holding advertisers a little bit more responsible with respect to the due diligence that maybe they should be doing out there. Here's what I think at a minimum. Don't you think this? Now, if an advertiser or a marketer, if they know for a fact that somebody's making a misleading, inaccurate claim about their product, do they have a responsibility to reach out and say, hey, we want this claim, you know, can you modify the claim or just remove it in total? I think it's a pretty good question. What do you think?
You're raising actually a very, I don't see where you went. Oh, there you are. You're raising actually a very complicated, fact-specific issue, which also relates to some disagreement about the way that the various laws on a federal level interact. You know, if you were to ask a regulator, and you know, Tom can talk a little bit maybe about how the FTC views this, but if you look at a regulator, they're going to take, or someone doing self-regulation, they're going to take a very expansive view. They're going to say, look, if you've got a website and you're allowing consumers to post content on it that you know is false, you should be responsible for that. You've got knowledge of that. Why should that be any different than any other content that you put in your own advertisement?
So I clarify,
on the other
not
hand,
necessarily necessarily, just unsubstantiated.
well,
same potential law violation.
right. So that under Section 5, you're responsible for not only ensuring that the claim is truthful, but that you've got reasonable proof for the claim too. And what's reasonable is going to depend on the type of claim that's being made, but if you're talking about a stop smoking product, I mean, you're going to look for competent, reliable scientific evidence for every single claim that you made. But the important conflict here is there's also something called the Communications Decency Act. And Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act says that essentially, and this is a wild overgeneralization simplification, that if you've got a website and you allow people to post stuff on there, you're not responsible for the content that's published on there from a truth standpoint. That if someone makes a claim on a website, the fact that it's defamatory, the fact that it harms someone in some way, and there's a million exceptions to them, and I'm overgeneralizing what's a 3-hour presentation in and of itself, it should be that you're not responsible for that. And there's this conflict here, and there's been some litigation over this, and it's still not fully settled, but the position that I would take as well as not someone who's not a regulator is that you have no responsibility for the content that is posted by third parties. However, I don't think that that's necessarily a practical position to take. I think that that's the legal argument that I would make if I were challenged by it. If I were challenged. On the other hand, I think you have to approach these problems in a practical way, and I think there's lots of different ways that you can go after advertisers. They may not be able to. There may be some Section 230 problems with that specific claims. But if the FTC believes that you're harming consumers, they'll find a different way to go after you. Right. But also, I would say as a responsible marketer, if you're advertising a product and you know that people are being misled by it, you're going to want to make those changes.
And FTC has taken a pretty expansive view for decades. I mean, in terms of when I mentioned knew or should have known as the standard, I was speaking about a seller's responsibility for somebody else's ad claims or somebody else's responsibility for the seller's ad claims. The FTC decades ago, basically announced that they were going to hold that third person or company to a knew or should have known standard, and they've applied it in years past against advertising agencies, against catalogs, large shopping channels. But it's nothing new in terms of how the FTC takes an expansive view about it. The challenge is applying that traditional expansive view to new social media, and how are they going to apply that today?
Right. I mean, what happened was with the rise of really it was message boards and this idea that you as someone who's providing this place for people to post things, you couldn't possibly look at everything. You couldn't possibly be it wouldn't be good for the development of the internet to be responsible for all these things. And so this section of the CDA was created to really immunize marketers, or not marketers, immunize website operators from liability for all kinds of crazy content that might be posted that really they have no responsibility for. At the time, people weren't thinking about review sites. People weren't thinking about the ways you can invite consumer content and have knowledge about the falsity of consumer content. Also, the reason this is highly fact-specific is even though there is definitely some core protection out there for third-party content, there's lots of ways you can look at what you're doing. How are you inviting the content? How are you repurposing the content? Are you categorizing it in some ways? Are you taking that content and putting it somewhere else? And I think that there's lots of ways in which someone who is trying to be creative can make you responsible for third-party content. But what I really, when I talk about designing some sort of a compliance program, I sort of divide it into two things. You got some defenses out there, you got some potential defenses out there under federal law, but that's really for the worst-case scenario. You can't build a business around that. What you have to think about is, look, if I'm creating a site and I'm inviting consumers to talk about it, and I really know that a great amount of the content is going to be false, I'm going to want to address that.
Great, thanks. Any other questions out there? We do have a couple of minutes left. Oh, please.
Hi. I work for a company. We make orthopedic products like braces and cold therapy. And on our websites and in our print, we do use testimonials from doctors. We also use testimonials from the general public. I'm not so worried about that. Is there an issue, almost like, are there like taboo words that we wouldn't want a doctor to use? For example, most of the testimonials that the doctor would use is, this is the best brace I have used in my practice, or this is better than anything I have used. If we have it on our web and we have it on our print, are we running into an area where we might have a problem because it is from a doctor and it could be seen that this person is an expert?
Well, the FTC, again, as part of their, as part of Section 255 of the Testimonial and Endorsement Guides, there's one section in particular that deals with expert endorsements. Tom, if you want to just elaborate just a little bit on the expert endorsements.
Sure. I mean, so an expert endorsement is covered by the FTC endorsement guides, and essentially, when you're using expert endorsements is perfectly permissible. But when you're using an expert endorsement, you have to do a lot of the same things you would with a consumer endorsement. The first thing you have to do is you want to make sure that it's true. That if the doctor's opinion is doctor's giving this opinion, and the doctor's saying, I recommend this one over all the other ones out there, that the doctor has in fact reviewed that one and has reviewed the others and tried them out and has made a judgment. I mean, basically, what the FTC says about expert endorsements is you have to really do two things. The first is the person has to actually be an expert in the field in which that they're talking. So one concern, the first question I would ask is the person that's doing this, that's giving you your endorsement, are they a general practitioner who happens to prescribe some of this some of the time? Or is this someone who's really an expert who really knows this stuff? So then you've probably got somebody who's an expert. The next question you want to ask is, what kind of representation is the doctor making? In other words, is the doctor saying, hey, I recommend this product? Is the doctor saying, I've reviewed the universe of products? Whatever that is, you want to make sure you've got substantiation for that. And then finally, you want to make sure that the expert's actually done the analysis, that the expert has actually exercised his or her expertise to give that endorsement. The final thing is people do assume that when you are using an expert endorsement that the expert's been compensated. So ordinarily you don't need to disclose that the expert's been compensated. There may be some exceptions to that, but that's sort of the general rule. I don't know if
right. And the safer thing obviously is to still disclose it. You've seen Restasis ads for eye drops. They disclose her compensation there.
But in terms of specific words that I would avoid using, I mean, again, it gets back to being tied to what you can substantiate. Just because it's the doctor's opinion doesn't immunize you from ensuring that you can independently substantiate the claims that the doctor's making. So, and this is putting aside all of the potential FDA issues in terms of how you promote medical devices and all that. That's in the panel in the afternoon. And but the thing you want to ask yourself is well, if the doctor's saying that it does this, do you actually have substantiation for that?
And do you have it before the claim is being made, not scrambling to get it afterwards?
Right, the post-dissemination thing, right. Well, I just want to, we're out of time here, unfortunately. I mean, we can go on, for hours talking about some of these issues. I just want to join me, please, in thanking my fellow panel members here for their time. And Brad, I think you want to come up and tell people about filling out their evaluation.